An American woman who has recovered from COVID-19 has a simple message for people who are worried. Don't panic, but do think about high-risk individuals and stay home if you feel ill. Now, she lives in Seattle. That's the biggest city of Washington state, which has the most deaths in the United States from coronavirus, novel coronavirus, which is currently sweeping the globe. She joins us on the phone line now from Seattle. Thank you very much indeed for speaking with NDTV, ma'am. Could you tell us how your symptoms first developed and what you did at the time?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me, Ankita. It's a real pleasure and an honor. So initially, when I started feeling symptoms, I woke up. It was a Tuesday. I was feeling a little bit tired, a little bit groggy. I didn't think too much of it. I thought that I was just a little overexerting myself. I had been out a lot the previous weekend with friends. Right. I went ahead and I went to the office. I went to work like normal. About midday, I started feeling unwell. I was starting to get a headache, a fever, feeling tired. I ended up going home early. I worked from home the rest of the day. I took an early evening nap. I woke up and I had 101 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. So at that point, I knew that I was definitely falling sick. But interestingly, I did not have any other symptoms. I didn't have any respiratory symptoms. I didn't have a cough. I didn't have any shortness of breath. I didn't have any tightness in my chest. So I didn't really immediately think that it was the coronavirus. By the time I went to bed, I was getting ready to fall asleep, and I took my temperature again, and it was 103 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 39 degrees Celsius. At that point, I was shivering uncontrollably. I was getting the chills. I could barely brush my teeth and get into bed. I took some over-the-counter medication. I took acetaminophen, Tylenol, essentially, and I went to bed. I got up the next morning, and thankfully my fever had come down to 101 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, I still wasn't thinking it was the coronavirus. This was almost 3 weeks ago, and at that point, there weren't that many cases in Washington State and Seattle. So I was happy my fever had come down on my own without going into the doctor or without going into the hospital. So I just called in sick, and then I just planned on staying home for the next few days. I took over-the-counter medications. I rested a lot. I drank a lot of fluids and I took vitamins, and it wasn't until a few days later that I actually started suspecting that it was the coronavirus.
And what did you do then? I believe you'd already taken a flu shot, so under ideal circumstances, you shouldn't have had a cold and cough in the first place.
हाँ जी, that's बिल्कुल सही बात है. मुझे हिंदी आती है, तो इसीलिए कभी-कभी मैं हिंदी में बताऊंगी. So yeah, I had a flu shot. I get a flu vaccine every year. But as many of you know, the flu vaccine doesn't cover for every strain of the flu. So at that point, I just thought that I had, a nasty flu that wasn't covered in the flu vaccine that I got at the beginning of the flu season. So at that point, I happened to go on Facebook, and I was just scrolling through, and I saw a post from one of my friends, and she was also sick, and she was describing her symptoms very similar to mine, and she was basically asking if anyone else in the Seattle area was feeling the same symptoms. She described fever, feeling tired, body aches, and headache, etc., a little bit of congestion. And so I commented and said, oh, yes, I'm sick too, and a bunch of other people commented. And the interesting thing is that myself and the woman who posted on Facebook and all the other commenters, we had all attended a house party 3 days prior on Saturday, February 22nd. And so it was very coincidental and very odd that we had all gotten sick, from the same party exactly at the same time, 3 days later.
Right. So tell us what you did at that point when you realized that this could in fact be COVID-19. Did you take any additional precautions? Did you reach out to local health authorities?
So at that point, I still didn't think it was coronavirus. Several of my friends who went to the party and had also fallen sick, they went to their doctors. Their doctors tested them for the flu. They initially thought it was the flu. They tested negative, and the doctors just sent them home to rest and recuperate. I believe that few of the people were given a prescription for Tamiflu. It's a common antiviral that's given for influenza. I assumed that maybe they were hoping it would have some sort of effect. None of the doctors suspected that they had coronavirus, namely because they didn't have any respiratory symptoms. They didn't have any cough, shortness of breath, tightness in their chest, etc. So they were basically just told to go home, stay home, rest, and recuperate. But several of these friends were obviously getting frustrated, and we wanted to kind of get to the bottom of this. So at that point, one of my friends posted on this Facebook post thread that there was a research study going on in the Seattle area at the time called the Seattle Flu Study. They were testing for different strains of the flu to study transmission in the community. But as the coronavirus cases in Seattle and in Washington state started increasing, they decided to additionally test for the coronavirus. So we signed up for the study. It was a very simple questionnaire, just asking, how you were feeling at the time. And in order to qualify, you obviously had to have one or other of the symptoms that was similar to flu. So all of us got qualified. And then we were sent actually an at-home nasal swab test kit. It's a very simple test kit. It's what they're doing right now at a lot of the drive-by testing centers that have cropped up in various countries.
Yes.
It's just a nasal swab, so you just stick it up your nose and wipe the sides of your nostril and then drop it in a tube, and then I mailed it back to the study researchers.
So that's when you got a positive confirmation that this was indeed COVID-19. Very quick last question. What is your advice to all those who have symptoms which are similar to COVID-19? What would you say to them?
So my first advice to everyone out there is please don't panic. There's a lot of anxiety right now, and we're seeing a lot of dire and dramatic things in the news and hearing lots of information from everyone, so it can be very easy to panic. I would tell people that if you are experiencing any of these symptoms, and even if you aren't experiencing the classic symptoms like a cough or respiratory issues, please try and stay home. Please try and isolate yourself from others. I think that here in the United States, they're saying to try and self-isolate for 14 days so that if by chance you do have COVID-19 or the coronavirus, you're not contagious to other people. And although myself, I'm healthy, I'm younger, I have no underlying health issues, I was able to get through it okay. There are others in the community. Every country we have elderly people, we have people that have compromised immune systems who have just undergone surgery, pregnant women, we have people that have had cancer. So please be mindful of those.
Right. All right.